On December 14, 2025, paramedics and police were dispatched to a home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. The house belonged to a man whose fingerprints lay lightly but indelibly across modern American entertainment. An actor who became a director who made intimate movies people felt they had lived in. By that afternoon, the world had learned what friends and family were struggling to accept. Rob Reiner was gone. The immediate air was one of stunned disbelief, an evenly pitched silence that travels differently through cities used to louder tragedies. News alerts moved across phones and bulletin tickers. Messages were sent and photographs of his films began to populate timelines and feeds. Moments of laughter and sorrow, scenes that had accompanied people's private lives. Inside the home where he had lived and worked, professionals converged. First responders, detectives, family representatives, and within days, lawyers and archivists. They came for an inventory, and what they found would become more than property lists and appraisals. They found documents that read like a life in process, annotated scripts, private recordings, narrow, stubbornly human notes about regret and repair. They found systems of giving so discreet they had been engineered to remain unseen in public reporting. They found fragments, unfinished stories and correspondence, that complicated the easy narratives the world had about him. This video begins there, not with the how, which will appear later amid verified records, but with the fact that a life the world had thought it knew opened up like a book with its margins exposed. The reason is simple: to feel the shock first, to let the absence press against the listener, and then to take the careful, sometimes painful inventory. The Brentwood property was, to neighbors' eyes, dignified and unassuming, a two-story home softened by mature trees, hedges, a gate that kept most of the street at a comfortable distance. To those who knew him, actors, writers, crew, it was a workplace that had crossed into domestic territory. Reiner's studio life and private life had been braided for decades. The house reflected that crossover. When legal teams opened the doors, the image that greeted them was not of spectacle. It was of a home that had been used. Rugs were softened at the edges. Books wore their spines like badges. Scripts lay in several rooms: in the living room, on a low coffee table, in the study's desk drawer, and in the bedroom nightstand. That the scripts were not locked away in temperature-controlled vaults was telling. This was an artist whose work never stopped calling him home. The living room felt less like a museum and more like a workshop. Awards were placed humbly on shelves or pushed gently toward the back of cupboards. Family photographs sat alongside production notes. Where you might expect a shrine of celebrity, the space instead suggested practice. Notebooks of notes, pencils sharpened down to stubs, and a battered director's chair folded into a corner. The study was the house's nervous center. A wall of books faced a heavy desk, its top scattered with correspondence, dated seaworthy, each paper marked with a date and a purpose. One of the initial catalogers, an archivist trained to read a life in paper, would later say, this was a man who kept the work close enough to touch. The study yielded one of the earliest and most provocative discoveries: a series of envelopes containing handwritten drafts, letters to friends, drafts of essays never published, and notes to himself. None were sensational in content. Most were exercises in moral self-checking. The bedroom and closets disclosed the ordinary textures of life: worn suits, jackets in careful rotation, a pair of slippers whose sole patterns matched repeated use. They also held small, intimate items that told smaller stories: index cards with lines of dialogue, a notebook filled with dates and single-sentence reflections, and a recipe scrawled in a hand that favored simple pleasures. Boxes in the garage spoke to time. Archivists found reels in heavy plastic, home movies, early footage, audio tapes, that appeared never to have been digitized. Not everything was publicly known. In many cases, the contents of these media would require careful preservation before the estate permitted access. Throughout the initial inventory, family representatives requested discretion. Many of the most intimate materials were designated for restricted review. Archivists who designed access procedures followed standard best practices: photograph first, then box, then seal. They digitized what could be digitized and documented provenance meticulously. Photographs changed the light in the room. The contact sheets were revealing: candid shots of actors between takes, close-ups of the director laughing under a brimmed hat, and behind-the-scenes frames marked in pencil, some with a single word, others with a star. On the backs of some prints, marginal notes suggested emotional work: hold this silence longer, or we rush the feeling. Scripts were annotated in multiple inks. Pages marked in red in 1991 had blue marginalia added in 2016. Some script margins bore the handwriting of other collaborators, suggesting that many projects had been collaborative in nature. In more than one draft, a scene was circled with a question that read, "Is this kind or easy?" That question, repeated in different forms across notebooks, became a thematic thread in the estate's private literature. Tapes posed a problem of access. Some were personal diaries in audio form, late-night monologues, ruminations, interviews with friends that were never meant for release. The estate's counsel, working with archivists, generally followed a principle common to many estates: preserve, do not publish, until family consensus and legal guidance were reached. On December 14, 2025, emergency services responded to a call at Rob Reiner's Brentwood home in the afternoon. Shortly after, Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were found dead in their residence. Police later treated the deaths as a homicide. One of the couple's children discovered their parents. Hours after the discovery, Rob and Michelle's son, Nick Reiner, was taken into custody by law enforcement. The Los Angeles County District Attorney announced that Nick Reiner would be charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, including the allegation of using a knife. The charge was made public on or around December 16, 2025, after an initial arrest and booking period. At the time, prosecutors indicated the possibility of severe sentencing due to special allegations. The court process, and the possibility of additional filings, remained underway. Rob Reiner's estate revealed a meticulous approach to money, one that mirrored the precision he had shown in his films. Walking through the home and reviewing ledgers, accountants and estate planners noticed patterns that spoke volumes. This was not simply wealth, but a lifetime of strategic thought about legacy, security, and responsibility. The Brentwood property alone was a symbol of a life well lived, but the estate extended far beyond its walls. Multiple trust structures were uncovered, some created decades ago, others more recent, carefully designed to benefit his family, sustain charitable interests, and preserve the continuity of his work. These trusts were layered, with some holding royalties from classic films, others tied to the revenues of ongoing streaming deals, and yet others earmarked for philanthropic distribution over time. The royalties themselves were revealing. They flowed through multiple channels: residuals from early acting work, percentages from films he directed, and even earnings tied to production roles. The complexity of the accounts demonstrated a mind deeply aware that creative work does not exist in isolation. It reverberates in financial terms long after cameras stop rolling. It was clear that every dollar was accounted for, every asset deliberately placed to ensure that family, collaborators, and causes he cared about would benefit. The estate also contained philanthropic frameworks. Donor-advised funds, foundations, and charitable trusts had been quietly established. Their records suggested a level of discretion and humility. Much of his giving had never been publicized, and it seemed designed to impact quietly rather than to draw attention. These structures were revealed gradually to family and legal representatives, creating a sense of awe. Here was a man whose generosity matched his artistry, carefully coded into spreadsheets and filings. And yet, despite all the complexity, there was one overriding theme. Reiner's financial architecture was functional but moral. It was about ensuring continuity, protecting those he loved, and leaving a structure that would last beyond the inevitable. For the estate planners, it was a rare glimpse of a mind as committed to integrity in life as he had been to storytelling on screen. Beyond property and accounts, the estate contained documents that revealed the inner life of Rob Reiner: letters, diaries, notes never meant for public eyes. These papers were delicate, sometimes fragmented, and often startling in their intimacy. They transformed the image of Reiner from a larger-than-life Hollywood figure into someone profoundly human. Some letters addressed collaborators and friends, reflecting gratitude, apology, or doubt. Others were fragments of diary entries, written in fleeting moments at night or between takes. One recurring motif was reflection on responsibility, to family, to colleagues, and to the public. Notes ranged from a single line to full paragraphs pondering difficult questions: am I listening enough? Or I have to trust the silence between words. These were lines that never reached scripts or interviews, yet they revealed a man constantly examining the weight of his influence. Among the handwritten pages were unsigned notes, sometimes cryptic, sometimes poignant. One small index card simply read, "Every story belongs to more than one person." Another contained a rough outline for a never-finished essay on ethics and creativity. Archivists and family members noted that these items did not feel incomplete. They felt deliberately unfinished, a record of a mind in motion. They reflected a tension between action and contemplation, between public success and private doubt. The emotional impact of discovering these writings was significant. Friends and colleagues who were invited to view some of the documents described them as hauntingly familiar, yet revealing in ways no one had expected. In some cases, letters clarified old misunderstandings. In others, they reopened emotional gaps that had never been fully addressed. Reading them, the estate team realized that the true treasure of Reiner's papers was not wealth or fame, but the intimate portrait of a life lived thoughtfully, carefully, and with deep moral consideration. Rob Reiner's influence in Hollywood extended beyond directing and acting. It was encoded in contracts, agreements, and professional relationships. The estate's financial and legal files revealed a side of Reiner few had ever considered: the the strategist who wielded influence quietly, deliberately, and ethically. Contracts uncovered in the estate spanned decades. There were agreements with actors, writers, and production companies that reflected a rare kind of foresight. Reiner's contracts often protected collaborators' rights, ensuring that writers received fair compensation, crew members retained residuals, and creative contributors were acknowledged appropriately. In multiple instances, clauses provided for royalties to continue even after projects had been sold or repackaged, a testament to his enduring commitment to the people who worked with him. Equally revealing were option agreements for unproduced scripts and projects. These documents demonstrated Reiner's keen eye for potential. He would secure the rights to projects not only for commercial value but also for the creative merit he saw in them. Some agreements showed flexibility, allowing writers to revise freely or retain certain creative decisions. It became clear that Reiner viewed contracts as instruments of collaboration, not control, a way to empower rather than dominate. The ledger also contained internal memos and correspondence with studios. These notes highlighted his reputation as a principled negotiator. He often argued for fairness and respect in negotiations, ensuring that even junior members of a production team received consideration. A recurring theme in these records was his belief that the health of a project was inseparable from the well-being of the people who made it. Ultimately, the Hollywood ledger revealed a facet of Reiner that contrasted with the glamour often associated with his career. Here was a man who understood power, not as a tool to amass fame or fortune, but as a responsibility to protect others and ensure that creativity could flourish. The estate offered not just a record of contracts, but a blueprint for integrity in an industry that often prioritizes profit over people. Behind locked doors, tucked into filing cabinets and safes, the estate revealed a treasure trove of scripts, story treatments, and partial projects that Rob Reiner had never shared with the public. Some were early drafts from decades ago, others were remarkably recent, suggesting creative energy that extended almost to his final days. These works were striking not for their polish but for their ambition. Several contained themes that had never appeared in Reiner's known films: complex explorations of family estrangement, ethical compromise, and the quiet struggles of ordinary people. One fragmentary screenplay ended mid-scene with a single penciled line, "We leave without tidy endings, because endings lie." It was as if Reiner were leaving a subtle reminder that life, like art, often resists closure. Among the scripts were collaborations with emerging writers, many of whom had trusted Reiner to shape and mentor their ideas. Drafts showed extensive handwritten notes in the margins, advice, suggestions, questions, and encouragement. He had encouraged revision, experimentation, and moral honesty, often ceding authorship or credit to let new voices flourish. Archivists and family members described the discovery as both inspiring and haunting. These unfinished works felt like whispers from a man who had never stopped questioning, never stopped pushing himself and others toward greater truth. They also raised questions. Why had these works remained private? Were they personal experiments, or stories he simply hadn't finished to his exacting standards? In some cases, these unreleased pieces directly contradicted the public perception of Reiner's artistic priorities. They revealed a curiosity and willingness to explore darker, morally ambiguous territory, an unexpected complement to the films he had brought to audiences over decades. The estate also contained a wealth of family documents, letters, trust arrangements, and private notes that revealed both love and complexity within the Reiner household. It quickly became clear that the surface image of a perfectly harmonious family life hid deeper layers of negotiation, compromise, and at times, tension. Trust documents and estate plans outlined not only property and financial distribution, but also long-term directives regarding access to personal materials and creative works. These documents indicated that Reiner had anticipated potential conflicts, setting up measures to protect the family from disputes over inheritance, intellectual property, and public exposure. Letters and notes revealed intimate family conversations, some affectionate, others frustrated, reflecting the natural complexity of close relationships. Some papers hinted at long-standing concerns or disagreements about creative decisions, personal choices, or the division of responsibility within the household. Even in these private documents, Reiner's moral and ethical considerations were apparent. He often sought compromise, fairness, and the well-being of everyone involved, even in difficult situations. However, not all family members were in alignment. Differences in interpretation and expectations occasionally surfaced in correspondence, foreshadowing the legal and emotional challenges that would later emerge. For the estate team, this period of review required both discretion and sensitivity. They were handling not just property and papers, but the intimate architecture of a family's life. The revelations were emotionally charged. Family members described the papers as simultaneously comforting and heartbreaking, evidence of Reiner's care and planning, but also a reminder of the fragility and complexity of human relationships. In these documents, the public persona of Rob Reiner merged with a private man, revealing a depth that had been hidden from view. With high-profile estates, the discovery of valuable or sensitive materials often triggers disputes, and Reiner's estate was no exception. Certain scripts, letters, and recordings became points of contention, particularly when collaborators, archivists, or family members sought access or control. The estate team faced the difficult task of managing both legal and emotional stakes. Some parties wanted immediate access to the unreleased works or private papers, citing personal connections or creative involvement. Others argued for restricted access to protect the family's privacy and to honor Reiner's presumed wishes. Legal battles emerged over interpretation of trust documents, access to intellectual property, and the rights of heirs versus collaborators. The proceedings were tense, revealing the challenge of balancing transparency, legacy, and personal boundaries. Each contested item became more than a physical object, it became a symbol of influence, memory, and control. The disputes were not only legal but also emotional. Family members wrestled with grief while simultaneously navigating complex decisions about the future of Reiner's creative estate. Archivists and scholars, eager to preserve history, pressed for early access to ensure materials were not lost or damaged. Lawyers mediated constantly, seeking compromises that could satisfy multiple interests without undermining legal requirements or ethical considerations. Through these battles, a clear pattern emerged. The estate was as much about preserving Reiner's humanity as it was about preserving his property. Contested items highlighted tensions between public curiosity, private grief, and professional legacy. They underscored one central truth: in the wake of Reiner's death, the story was no longer just about one man. It was about the people he had touched, the work he had created, and the ways in which his life continued to ripple outward. Even in conflict, the materials themselves conveyed a message. Reiner's life and work were far more layered than anyone had assumed, and the choices made in these legal and emotional disputes would shape how his story would be remembered for generations. The day Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were discovered dead, law enforcement and emergency services moved with meticulous precision. Within hours, the Brentwood residence became a hive of forensic activity. Investigators cordoned off the property, documenting every room, every object, and every piece of potential evidence. Every surface, every drawer, every stack of papers was carefully photographed and catalogued. Fingerprints, footprints, and traces of biological material were collected systematically. Investigators also retrieved electronic devices, phones, computers, and recording equipment, each examined for clues that could provide context or clarify the timeline. Parallel to the forensic examination, law enforcement worked on constructing a timeline of events. Witness statements were taken from neighbors, friends, and staff who had visited the house in the hours and days prior. Police also reviewed security footage from the property and surrounding streets. The goal was not merely to document the scene, but to reconstruct the final hours of a life that had captivated millions. Within 2 days, law enforcement identified a suspect in connection with the deaths, leading to the arrest of Rob and Michelle's son, Nick Reiner. Formal charges of first-degree murder with special circumstances were filed, setting in motion a legal process that would dominate headlines and shape the narrative of the estate. Amid the forensic and legal proceedings, investigators also began cataloging items of interest in the home, noting which documents, recordings, and scripts might be relevant to the ongoing case. While some of the materials would eventually be sealed for privacy, the forensic trail ensured that every artifact of Reiner's life was accounted for, providing a foundation for both legal clarity and historical preservation. The meticulous nature of this work revealed something profound. Even in death, Rob Reiner's life was treated with the same care and attention to detail that had characterized his career. Every object mattered, every note had significance, and the estate's contents were as much a record of a man's life as any police report or legal filing. News of Rob Reiner's death and the subsequent arrest sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry and the public at large. Tributes poured in from actors, directors, writers, and fans who had been touched by his work. Television networks aired retrospectives, streaming platforms highlighted his films, and social media became a forum for both mourning and reflection. Yet as the initial wave of grief passed, the conversation deepened. Commentators and cultural critics began examining Reiner's body of work, searching for meaning in his films and the man behind them. Suddenly, the private writings, unreleased scripts, and personal letters discovered in the estate took on immense significance. Scholars and journalists debated the moral and artistic lessons embedded in his unpublished works. Family members, meanwhile, faced the difficult task of balancing grief with public scrutiny. Statements released to the media emphasized privacy and reflection, yet the world remained hungry for insight into a life that had once seemed so transparent through the lens of Hollywood fame. The estate's revelations, particularly the annotated scripts, letters, and unreleased projects, challenged easy narratives. They complicated the story of Rob Reiner as merely a beloved director or actor, revealing layers of doubt, introspection, and moral concern. As these discoveries became public, the perception of Reiner evolved. He was no longer just the man behind the camera. He was a multi-dimensional figure, a human whose private contemplations revealed a tension between public success and personal introspection. Fans and critics alike wrestled with this new portrait, leading to a reassessment of his legacy, not just as a cultural icon, but as a person navigating the complexities of morality, family, and creativity. The public reckoning also highlighted broader truths about fame, grief, and memory. How do we reconcile admiration for work with curiosity, or judgment, about personal life? How do we honor a legacy when the most intimate artifacts of that life are both illuminating and unsettling? In answering these questions, the world gained not closure, but a deeper understanding of the man whose life had been so intricately documented. With the investigation concluded and the initial disputes over the estate beginning to settle, what remained was a portrait of a life that was complicated, remarkable, and profoundly human. The unreleased scripts, annotated notes, and personal letters ensured that Rob Reiner's story could continue to be told in new ways, offering insight into both his creative process and his moral compass. These materials, carefully preserved and catalogued, became the foundation for scholarship, film study, and private reflection. Financially, the estate's complex architecture allowed the family to maintain stability while honoring Reiner's philanthropic and creative commitments. Trusts and charitable structures ensured that both wealth and legacy were carefully stewarded. The careful planning revealed a man who, even in the face of mortality, prioritized fairness, responsibility, and continuity. Emotionally, the estate left a resonant impact. Family members, friends, and collaborators found themselves grappling with a mixture of grief, admiration, and astonishment at the depth of Reiner's life. The unreleased works and private papers highlighted not only his genius, but also the vulnerability and reflection that defined him as a person. Ultimately, what remains of Rob Reiner is more than films, awards, or accolades. It is a record of a life lived with care, complexity, and consideration, an intricate tapestry of public achievement and private contemplation. Through the estate, the world is reminded that legacy is not simply what we leave behind, but how thoughtfully we manage it, how ethically we live, and how deeply our life resonates with those who continue after us. In the quiet rooms of the Brentwood house, among scripts, letters, and recordings, the echoes of his life endure. They speak to anyone willing to listen, to the careful eye, the moral question, the unfinished story. They remind us that even after death, a life can continue to challenge, inspire, and leave us utterly speechless. If this journey through Rob Reiner's life, his estate, and the shocking discoveries left you speechless, don't forget to like this video to show your support. Every like helps us bring you more deep dives into the lives and legacies of the world's most fascinating figures. And make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a story that uncovers the hidden truths behind fame, fortune, and the lives that shaped our world. Every story has secrets, every life has layers, and we're here to reveal them, one chapter at a time.